Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Tristan Rallings, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Cheryl Elston. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Frank Robinson Grimson. Frank Grimson, known to friends as Clancy, was born in Yeovil, New South Wales on the 14th of July 1908, the third eldest son and reportedly one of 10 children of Charles and Ethel Grimson. Frank's father, Charles, had served in the Boer War and the First World War. He first saw service in Eastern Transvaal and Eastern Orange River Colony with the 3rd Mounted Rifles in 1901 and 1902, and then put down his age in order to enlist in the First World War, earning a Distinguished Conduct Medal for conspicuous gallantry on Gallipoli. After receiving a gunshot wound to the foot in June 1915, he spent several months in hospitals in Alexandria and Cairo before returning to Australia with a medical discharge. In the 1930s, the Grimson family lived in Orange, engaged in farming. In October 1931, newspapers announced that the mutilated remains of a murdered adult male found in Wallakalumbi in North Queensland had been identified as those of Frank Robinson Grimson. Frank had disappeared about a year earlier while taking horses north to Quilpie Station, and his relatives feared the worst when they heard of the unknown man's body being found. Frank was missing the middle toe of his right foot and had 2 of his teeth covered in amalgam, but the remains were too badly charred and mutilated for accurate identification. Regardless, his father was notified that Frank's body had been found, before it was learned some weeks later that Frank Grimson had been located elsewhere. Frank's father died on the 20th of October 1939, not long after the announcement of Australians' involvement in the Second World War. Frank Grimson enlisted for service in May 1941 in Sydney. Given his occupation as a master bootmaker, it wasn't long before he was allocated to the Ordnance Store in Liverpool and appointed a bootmaker. After a period of pre-embarkment leave, he embarked for overseas service on the 28th of June 1941, landing in the Middle East a month later. In early February 1942, Grimson gave up his role as a bootmaker and transferred to an ordnance store company. In June, he was earmarked for reinforcement to the 2nd 13th Battalion, but by early August, he was part of the 2nd 28th Battalion. The 2nd 28th Battalion had been serving in a garrison role in the aftermath of Syria-Lebanon campaign. Midway through the year, however, German and Italian forces began advancing towards Egypt, and the battalion moved to the Western Desert. There it had taken part of the First Battle of El Alamein in July. After Grimson joined the 2nd 28th in September, it returned to the front line, taking part in the Second Battle of El Alamein on the 23rd of October. It conducted raids behind German lines before moving into the main area of operations around a position dubbed the Saucer on the 31st of October. Between July and November 1942, the Australian 9th Division suffered almost 6,000 casualties. Among the dead was Frank Grimson, who had died of wounds on the 1st of November 1942. He was 34 years old and was survived by a large family, including 3 brothers who were serving in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. Today, his remains lie in the El Alamein War Cemetery under the inscription chosen by his grieving family, "His duty nobly done." His name is listed on the roll of honour to my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Frank Robinson Grimson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.